And we have Donnie and we have Ben. So we've got some diversity in our participants, which is fabulous. Yesterday we were all gals. You guys abandoned us. We had to fend for ourselves. Hello, Kathleen. Hello, Anne, Donnie, Piran, Rhonda, Rebecca, Marcela. My cousin's name in Argentina is Marcela. All right, let's get started because we've got a busy day. Today, we're going to talk about how we can revolutionize our grazing. I saw there were a couple questions that were relating to this yesterday in the chat. If we have time, I will address it. If not, we will cover them on Monday at our bonus session. Just a reminder, on Monday, we will have our Ben Davis, and I promise I'm not going to get emotional. He will be sharing how holistic management and the principles and practices that he learned, and some of them I've shared with you, how they've influenced his operation and how his land is reacting to that management, and anything else he wants to share too. I've given him free rein. And then we're going to have a Q&A. So if you have any specific questions, I'd be happy to answer that. So let us start off. So the theme of today, I'm going to be a little bit braggadocious. The theme of today is how I tripled my carrying capacity on 100 acres in 2 years. And the reason I'm doing that is because I want to end with the story, which is going to lead to another story. I've got too many windows open. There we go. Everybody see a screen? Revolutionize your grazing practices. Everybody good? People can make grazing very difficult and very complicated. I find that if we can focus on the 3 levers and the 1 principle, that simplifies everything. We are going to focus on what those 3 levels are. I'm going to do the 3 levers pretty quickly just to refresh your memory. And if you're new to grazing, this will all be new. But I think it will be very important. So what I'm talking levers are, there's time, there's density, and there's herd effect. Time is the duration of grazing and the recovery periods, which we'll discuss. Density is the number of animals that you have per unit of acre. When you drive through Texas and many other states, animals that have free range over the whole ranch, that is very low density. Density is not to be confused with stocking rate. The stocking rate is the number of animals you have per acre. And many people, if you talk to county extension agents and if you talk to your county appraisal, they're going to say you need 3 animal units per acre. An animal unit is about 1,000 pounds. So that means you only need to have 3 1,000-pound animals on your land to be tax exempt. Will that be enough for your grazing manager? Likely not, but a lot of land stewards are just trying to get the ag exemption. But I'm going into a whole different tangent, so let me come back and retrace myself. So density is how spread out or how compacted those animals that you have on your land are. And then herd effect is everything that the animal does to the land. It is the grazing, the trampling, the urination, the manuring, the salivation when it grazes, the rubbing, if you've got bushes and trees, the rubbing, all of that is what we'll term herd effect. And the principle that I want to get you to focus on is we want to manage for what we want. A lot of times we get caught up in managing for something else, and then it complicates things. So we want to use these livestock with an intentional purpose to derive an intentional outcome. If you want native bunch grasses, then you're going to manage your grazing so that you promote the germination and the growth of native bunch grasses. So we manage for what we want. With respect to time, it is crucial for plant recovery and regrowth, which is the theme of today's class. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. It affects soil compaction. It affects nutrient distribution too. Very simply, if you have the animals, if on my 100 acres, if I let my 40 cows have access to all 100 acres, that means I've got manure paddies that are scattered everywhere, and it's just not very concentrated. But if I put all 40 cattle in a quarter-acre paddock, then you can imagine that concentration of that manure, right? And all that manure is full of those microbes and enzymes that come from the rumen that the cow is helping break down that cellulose, and what doesn't break down, it becomes the manure, and you've got all those enzymes and microbes that are being deposited. And when you've got it concentrated, it's going to speed up that mineral cycle. If you're having them all over the ranch, they're doing it very spotty, and so you're not speeding that up. And then it's time is key to the prevention of overgrazing. And let me explain overgrazing. When you drive through most Texas county roads, you will see ample examples of overgrazing. When the grass is this high and nothing is green, that is a pasture full of overgrazed plants. And by overgrazing, my definition is you've allowed that cow or the sheep or the goats or whatever animal you've got, you've allowed them to come back and eat that grass before that grass has had time to recover. All right. And cattle are just like children. When you allow children free access, free reign to an all-you-can-eat buffet, they're going to keep going back to what they like to eat, right? In my case, it's the sweets. I'm going to go to eat the sweets. If I have no restrictions, I'm going to go back and eat the sweets until there's no more. And then I guess I've got to go get some salad. And then I guess I've got to go get some protein. The cattle do the same thing. Their noses are a magnetic field, and they sense that high energy of the high energy plants that generally have a lot of nutrition. And when you put them in a new pasture, if you put them in a new paddock, they're going to go and their nose is going to say, okay, this plant is good. No, this plant is good. No, this plant is good. And when they start grazing, they're going to go to those plants that are good, that have high energy, high nutrition. When that is gone, they'll go to the second best and the third best. If you leave them long enough and that high energy plant has had time to grow a little bit, guess what? That cow's going to come back and eat it and graze it down. And that plant wants to grow. And because you've grazed it too soon, all that energy to make it grow now is coming from the roots. And every time you allow that cow to graze a little bit more of that grass plant before it has a full time to recover, I'll give you a visual of what full recovery looks like. It's eating up those roots. It's killing off those roots. And eventually, if you allow that cow to come back and regraze, the roots are gone and you kill off the plant. Which is why most of Texas pastures are full of goat weed, because Mother Nature is prudish. She does not like to be naked. She's going to throw out the first thing she can to cover herself. And in Texas, it's goat weed. If you allow the soil to be covered, if you allow the litter, if you allow the animal to, if you keep the animal from grazing that plant before it has time to recover, you will see diversity in grasses come in. You will see the natural seed bank that's in the soil start germinating. This is my little caveat. There's no need to buy seed. There's seed in the soil. We just need to create the environment for that seed to germinate. And we can do that by managing the animals, using time, and density. Enough about that, because we're going to talk a little bit more. Density basically tells you, instead of giving the animal the all-you-can-eat buffet, you're saying, this is the plate I'm giving you for today. So you get to eat this plate. You can't eat anything else. And then the next day, I'm going to give you another plate to eat. So you're restricting. So that means that cattle, just like children, right? When we put those boundaries with the children, no, you have to eat what I put on the plate, and it's got some salad, and it's got some protein, and it's got some carbs, and anything else that we want to feed our children with. We're doing the same thing with the cows. We're saying, you've got to eat all of this, which means they can't select. And this is how we manage for what we want. We force them to eat those undesired plants that generally lignify, generally it's all that gray stuff that they don't touch, that they ignore because it's not palatable, because it's not nutritious. So the density, if you bunch them up, you control the grazing. The other thing you do too is all that hoof action is going to break up that cap soil, right? That soil that is bare, that the rain has capped and made this cap. When you bunch them up, all those hooves are going to break down that cap, and you get that deposit of that manure, you get the deposit of that urine, and all of a sudden you've jump started the mineral cycle, and things start growing for you. And the density, as I said earlier, will help you manage the species of grasses that you've got growing. And then the herd effect, as I said, we've got trampling, we've got the hoof action, we've got the grazing patterns, we've got, because of the concentration, you've got the manure stimulating the mineral cycle, you've got the soil disturbance, and so that breaks up that cap, it creates indentation. So if it rains, then that rain puddles in that little indentation and allows for better infiltration. And it's basically mimicking, what we're trying to do here is mimicking the Native Americans' experience with the bison, right? Because of predators, the bisons moved as a herd. And so they just moved around grazing, trampling, and because they were in tune with nature, they had this whole cycle, and they returned when those grasses were in palatable, high energy conditions. So we're trying to mimic the same. We're just using that with time, density, electrical polywire, and herd effect. So that's a very high overview of grazing. When I say we want to manage for what we want to set clear goals for what you want for your landscape and what you want for your production. If you're in a high desert, your goals are going to be different than if you're in Southeast Texas, where you get the effects of all the hurricanes and all this water, and you've got shallower soils. We want to use the livestock. We're working with nature, so we don't have to come in and put in equipment. We can invest in a cow that's going to give you a much better rate of return than a tractor, than a seed drill, than spending the money on fuel, spending all that time on the tractor. And then you go to the coffee shop, and you're eating too much because you're at the coffee shop every morning, and you're sitting in the tractor all day, so you're not getting exercise. So your quality of life starts to deteriorate, and you start getting that pooch, you start getting the hips. I'm going on a tangent. But you get my drift, right? It's that you're managing, you're trying to balance everything together. And we're using those animals that are the better return on rate of investment to help Mother Nature express herself, right? We're going to manage, we're going to be stewards, we're going to promote, we're going to create the conditions to allow Mother Nature to express herself, and we're going to respond to what we're seeing, and recognizing that we have very little control over Mother Nature. I see this all the time on my place. Because of my high rainfall, it's been a very busy summer. I've had all this rainfall. I have morning glory growing all over my fences that I haven't been able to get to. because I just haven't been able to get to, right? Mother Nature's going to take over. So we're not in as much control as we think we are. And we've got to align all of these practice for what our holistic goal is, what our values are, what our desired outcomes. So all these things that we've been working on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday all come into managing for what we want. So we need to allow the grass to grow. I am always very surprised at how many people are grazing and do not know how plant grows, how a grass plant grows. It basically has a sigmoid curve. So it will start slow and then it'll have a high growth rate. And then just at the time it's seeding out, it peaks out. This is the growth rate. The nutritional value of the grass is highest when it's growing in the growing phase, and it peaks out just as it's starting to form a seed head, when that seed head is just becoming viable, and then it tanks. So we want to graze it up here in this green dot, ideally. Are we going to get it perfect every time? Absolutely not. But this is where managing for what you want comes. If you're trying to promote native bunch grasses and you start seeing native grasses start germinating because you're seeing that biological community become more stable, you're creating that soil environment to allow the seeds that are in the seed bank in the soil start germinating. Like I think I shared earlier, I've got Indian grass growing that I never seeded, that just started growing because I've improved the soil conditions, right? I've got a lot of blue stem. I do not have Eastern Gamma grass, which is a higher successional grass. When I get that, I'll be celebrating, let me tell you. So this is my goal. I want the bunch grasses. So I'm planning my grazing. When I recognize that I've got one of these grasses growing, I'm going to focus my grazing to accommodate that growth. The fact that I've got KR blue stem, the fact that I've got coastal, the fact that I've got some tridents, all these things, I don't care. I'm abusing these other ones, but I'm really taking care of the grass plants that I want. So I'm trying to graze them at this time, because what happens when they graze just as you form the viable seed head? When they graze it, first it's high protein. That seed is high protein. Second, what doesn't get, when it goes through the rumen, it's getting, what is the terminology? Scarified? Is that what it is? Yeah, scarified. If it doesn't break down the seed, then it's going to come out in the manure. And guess what? You're allowing the animal to seed that grass plant for you. They're fabulous four-legged tools. So we want to manage for what we want. I want you to notice here on the roots, as the plant grows above ground, the roots so grow below ground. And when you start having native bunch grasses growing, the roots will go much deeper. And I have a photo in a couple slides that will show you that. When we allow that animal to come in and overgraze over here, right? We allow the animal and it comes graze. It cuts this green leaf in half. And then 3 days later, generally grasses start growing generally after 3 days. So if they come back in day 6 and there's a little bit of growth and they're going to top this off, we've already got a few roots in the ground. We come in and top it off before it's had time to grow enough again. This root ball is going to shrink because that energy has to leave the roots to go above ground to start growing that green leaf. The importance of allowing a plant to recover means that you're allowing that plant to recover and it's strengthening the root system. It also improves, the roots are basically what helps with all the soil biology, feed the soil biology, make a home for the water and the mineral. and carbon sequestration, all these things that we've been hearing about. It also, the more roots you have, the more resilient you are to droughts, the more resilient you are to floods, the more resilient you are to winds, and all of these things. The other day, no, this spring, I saw a video on social media of it was in Scandinavia somewhere, and the wind was blowing, and the trees were blowing, and the root base was very shallow, and that root base was just lifting off the ground because it was such a shallow root base. It wasn't anchored in. So when we, as grazers, yes, we want to grow grass, but really we want to grow roots. So I did not do this experiment. This is an experiment that Dr. Goodman at Auburn University did. She took, these are all the same species of grass plant. This is a grass plant that has been dug up, and you can see the growth above ground, and look at this root system below ground. Look how extensive that is. So this is a grass plant that has never been grazed. The second one is, it was grazed once, and 90% of the leaf above ground was removed. Look at the effect of getting 90% of that leaf removed, what it did to the root base. Compare that one to this one. All right. The third one, 50% of the leaf base was removed over a 3-day period. And look at how that root base shrunk even more. And then the fourth one is 90% of the leaf base was removed over a 3-day period. So I want you to see the impact of the grazing above ground, what it does below ground to the root system. The reason we want to focus on roots is because that's where the mineral zone is. That's where all the minerals that we need to support our bodies, the manganese, the potassium, the calcium, all these things that nourish our body is held in this root zone. The roots are what helps bring it up into the grass plant, and then the animal eats it, and then we eat the meat from the animals, and we're getting a nutrient dense piece of meat. So the bigger your root zone is, the bigger your mineral and food zone is. And by food zone, all the food that the soil biology and all the creatures in the soil need to eat and to support themselves. This is also where we store water. The more roots we have, the more water storage we have. Okay. So we need to focus. What we do above ground affects the roots below ground. This is a picture of native bunch grasses in the Smithsonian Museum. I don't know what each of them are, but look how long these roots are. Some of these roots are 10 foot, 12 foot long. Think about how much minerals are being stored here, or not stored, made available, because the mycorrhizal fungi, and Kathleen can probably, and Rebecca can probably speak much more intelligently about this than I can. And then think of the water storage. How resilient is this landscape if you have a drought? Think of all the water storage in here. I borrowed this from Ian Mitchell Innes. He's a fellow educator from South Africa, and he ran into this organization that actually measured the volume of forage based on different recovery rates. And I saw this, and I was mind blown. So I'm sharing it with you. I do not know, and he did not know, to share the stocking rate, the quality of the forage, all the specifics, but I think this story is very impactful. When you allow plants, in this case, when they allowed the grass plants to recover for 10 days, so it was grazed, and then they recovered it they allowed it to recover for 10 days, and then they measured the volume of that grass. It was equivalent to 628 pounds per acre. When they allowed those grass plants to recover for 20 days, then the volume of that grass plant that recovered was equivalent to 2,587 pounds per acre. And for those of you that don't know, an animal consumes about 3% of its body weight. So if you've got 1,000-pound animal, it needs about 30 pounds of feed per day to feed. So I'm not going to go into the math because we don't have time to do that. But this is a lot of volume. If they allowed the grass plant to recover for 30 days and they measured the volume of the grass available, and it was 6,227 pounds per acre. That's how much grass you can grow. That's why I can say I tripled my carrying capacity within 2 years, because you're allowing all that grass plant that, there's all this forage that has grown. Another way to see it, I'm a visual person. I put this together. Depending on your brittleness scale, and we haven't discussed that, we can talk about it later. Your recoveries are going to be between 30 days and 180 days. Out here in the dry season, I plan for about 45 days of recover. In West Texas, it's probably closer to 2 years. It will vary depending on the rate of rainfall you have and the frequency of that rainfall. So you're a set stock grazer, you've come to a workshop, they've told you about this recovery thing, you're like, I'm curious, I'm going to go back. You go back, and this is what your pastures look like. They're all very short and you've got very little roots, but you go home and you decide to divide your pasture into 10 different paddocks. And so after 30 days of recovery, you now have the equivalent of 20 paddocks in volume of grass. So now you've doubled the volume because you've allowed that grass to recover for 30 days. Then so you graze through all 10 paddocks, and then you allow it to recover. Let me explain. So you graze paddock 1, then you go graze paddock 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. By the time you come back to paddock 1, you have now grown 20 paddocks worth of volume, equivalent for those 10 paddocks, because you've allowed that grass plant to recover. You understand? So now you've gone a second round and you're grazing those 10 paddocks, and you've got more forage to graze. Now, in this case, all you're doing is topping it off. You're not eating it down to the ground. You're just topping off the top. So the third time around, now you've got the equivalent of 30 paddocks volume worth of grass. And you go through all 10 paddocks and you've got all this volume. And now you've got a fourth grazing where you've got 40 paddocks volume worth of grass. And depending on your growing season, when your frost hits, if frost hits right now, then you've got 40 paddocks worth in volume available for you to graze. So this is what keeps you from having to buy hay, because now you've got all this volume because you've allowed it to recover. Now, the caveat here is you've only topped off the top. You haven't grazed the plant down. So there's a lot of, think of the energy flow, right? You've got a lot of green to photosynthesis to happen. So you've got a lot of energy. That energy is helping that grass plant grow. And you're also helping the roots grow. And then obviously, if you're able to graze, if your season is longer, your growing season is longer, then you will increase to 50 paddocks worth of volume of grass. So recovery, allowing the plant to recover, is going to be critical in reducing the input costs that you've got in your operation. When you have a drought, you will, depending on where you are on your on the recovery of the ecosystem functions, you will likely need less hay than if you had just been allowing the overgrazing to happen. Additionally, we talked about soil cover. You're also, because you're not allowing that, they're just topping off, and you've got some density there too. Some of the grass plant is going to be trampled, and so you're creating litter, and so you're providing armor. You're protecting, you're covering the soil. So what that means is where grass plants were wide apart, now all of a sudden they're going to start growing closer because you're protecting, you're creating an environment where they're allowed to germinate and allowed to grow out. To the base of that grass plant will increase. Recovery is universal. If you've watched YouTube, as I like to call it, YouTube University, there's a whole bunch of different methods of grazing. There's take half, leave half. There's total grazing. There's strip grazing. There's mob grazing, adaptive, rotational, leader, frontal grainer. No matter, in my opinion, this is just Christine opinion, I don't care how you graze. All I care about is how much recovery are you allowing for. Now, as you can imagine, if you're going to do total grazing, which means you're going to, for those of you that don't know, total grazing is you have really high density, so you bunch them up really, the animals really tight, and generally you're moving 3, 4, 5 times a day, depending on how much forage you have available, and they take the grass down to the ground for the most part. So when they leave, that paddock looks like they decimated it, and what didn't get grazed got trampled. If you're going to do, if that is a tool, all of these different practices are all tools to help manage your life, your landscape, to manage for what you want. They all have pros and cons, but it's a matter of adapting so that you're managing for what you want. Sometimes if you inherit a piece of property that has not been grazed in years and it's been over-rested, and you've got all this gray plant matter, sometimes total grazing is the best tool. Will you need to supplement? Yes, because all that gray matter and everything that growing, the nutritional quality is probably very low, but you're creating that density, you're stimulating the mineral cycle, you're stimulating the biological community, and you're eliminated all that gray stuff that is not doing anything and is, yes, it's probably protecting the soil, but it's not doing much of anything else. So all these are different it's tools of how to use your animals. And you can do one season one way, another season that way. Even on your property, you might attack one pasture differently than the rest of the pastures because you're struggling. You've got a management goal that's different than everybody else. So where holistic management is known for is the grazing plan, and there's 19 steps to complete the grazing plan. The focus of that grazing plan is we're planning for recovery, because recovery is not going to be the same throughout the whole growing season. In the springtime, when grass is growing really fast, when it's growing fast, you move fast. And so that means recovery time is going to be much shorter than in July and August when it gets hot and we have very little rain. So you're going to have a longer period there. And then, at least in Texas, my ex-husband used to say it always rains Labor Day. And This year he was right. And so we get a second growth after the Labor Day rains. And so you don't need that longer recovery that you had in July and August. Now you're going to shorten that recovery period. So it's an adaptive process. And as much as people think they can manage it all in their head, they can't. There is a spreadsheet. There is an actual sheet. I meant to have one here to show you, but I don't have one available. So we're planning our moves so that we're not putting the animals in there before those grass plants have had time to recover. That's the bottom line. So the biggest shift about this recovery revolution, as I call it, is you're shifting your focus from grazing to recovery. It's all about the recovery. You're prioritizing plant and soil health so that you can be more resilient, so you can reduce your input costs, so that you have more long-term productivity. You're being very adaptive, and you're testing, and you're being creative, and you're like, okay, I'm going to use this here, and I'm going to use this here. There's a lot of tools available to us. We just have to know which tool's the right one for the problem, the root cause that we're trying to address. Always monitor animal performance. As I shared in one of the stories earlier this week, I had one person come to me saying, I'm rotationally grazing, I'm moving them every day, but my conception rate is low and I'm not getting the calves. She was so concerned about moving the animals daily and giving them the right amount of what she perceived the right amount of the plate to eat, that they weren't getting enough nutrition. And so their body condition and their quality just deteriorated. They became skinny cows. And so we have to balance those ecosystem needs with the production goal needs. And again, recovery is key. This is what we want to manage for. And one of the things I really like about managing for recovery is we really have to develop our observation. I made a note earlier this week. Observation is key. We constantly need to look and see what the land is telling us so we can respond to it. We're monitoring for animal performance. A lot of times a lot of these ranches, they drop off the animals and then they don't see them until the fall when they collect them again. And all sorts of things can happen to these animals in that time period. This way, you're looking at them every single day, and you can start saying, she's not looking so good. She tended to be with the herd, and now when I move them from one paddock to the other, she's the last one. She's straggling. What's going on? I'm going to watch her, right? Additionally, we get to go out and be in nature. We get to walk. We get to exercise, we get to pick up hard things, we get to see animals being born. So we get to enjoy our ranch rather than sitting in a coffee shop. Am I biased or am I biased? So this is how I tripled my carrying capacity on my 100 acres in 2 years. The first year I was on here, I had 40 cows, I had 60 sheep, and at that time I was doing a batch of turkey every month, and the batches were 50 poults each that then grew into turkeys, except for in July when I did a batch of between 100 and 200 turkeys because of Thanksgiving turkeys. And I tried to do a lead follow with the grazing, but I'll be honest, I didn't do that very well. I did the cattle, I followed them with the sheep, the turkeys. Just the reality is that moving the turkeys was not a fun move. And so I ended up not doing it as often as I should, which I'm still suffering the consequences of all the goat weed that occurred because the turkeys stayed in a spot too long. And that's where I've got the goat weeds. I've got sections of goat weed. But I plan for recovery. So I plan on my first graze on March 15th. So that's when I plan to have my first one. And then my recovery at that time is about 20 days. So I'll graze around and then come back within 20 days. And then come May and June, I'll extend it to 30 days. And July and August, it'll be 45 days. And then if we get the Labor Day rains, I'll bring it back to about 30. If not, I continue 45. But because I'm allowing for recovery, that means that in December, November, December, whenever we get that frost, I've got standing forage that I can use for the winter feeding. That first year, I think I used 25 hay bales because I had the standing forage, and I used the hay bales more as a protein source. And I did feed some alfalfa cubes in there. The second year, I had 50 head of cattle. I had 40 sheep because I couldn't keep them alive. And then I still had the turkeys, and basically did the same. But I found that I was having to move quicker because I was growing more grass. And that winter, I had so much stockpile, I think I only used 15 hay bales. And I had planned for a lot more hay bales. And so the third year, those hay bales that I had left over, I ended up just throwing them out on the pastures for the animals to nibble on. And I strategically put them on spots that needed a little bit more surface condition to help improve the landscape function. So allowing for recovery and planning for this recovery will help you reduce input costs and increase your productivity and allow you to carry more animals with the same amount of work. And you're out there and you're active and you're communing with nature. So at this time, I would like you all, we're going to do something different. I would like you to all close your eyes. And think of your ranch of 10 years, what it might look like in 10 years. All right. So let me, where am I? Your pastures are full of diverse, nutrient-dense grasses. Bees and monarch butterflies and dung beetles are buzzing on the top of the grasses. You've got full, slick-coated mama cows with thriving calves at their heels, 1- and 2-year-old heifers and steers grazing in the lush paddocks. You feel confident because you've got a grazing plan that will allow nature to express herself, and provide you abundant grasses to feed your livestock throughout the year, even in winter, realizing you don't have the expense of making or purchasing hay and storing it. All those calves mean that your grass-fed direct-to-consumer enterprise is growing and providing the profits so that you can invest in other enterprises or infrastructure on the land. You look over at the ranch office and you see your daughter who came back to the ranch after college to help run the ranch, talking to the ranch manager about the week's schedule of activities and a new project she wants to try out, knowing later she'll report to you in your weekly meeting. Your son and your husband are supervising the construction of a new building that will be a place to host workshops and community events to encourage others to thrive as your ranch is thriving. And you're excited because the biannual reunion with your college friends in Italy, because who doesn't love pasta and wine, is coming up. Something that was only a dream 10 years ago before you started thinking holistically and stewarding your land. And to work with nature. I'm sorry, I'm getting emotional because I realize how important and impactful this way of managing is. So I'm getting emotional. And you're stewarding your land to work with nature and making decisions that honor and balance your financial desires, quality of life, and ecological desires. So these last 4 days and tomorrow, I've taught you some fundamental concepts that I chose because I think they will help you become a thriving regenerative rancher. And you have a choice now. You can take these 5 concepts that I've shared with you and go and implement them on your own and figure all this out on your own. Or you can join the Thriving Land Steward program that I'm starting as a founding member, which is a 12-month program that will support you in your journey. I wanted to show you this because I've shown you 5 concepts during the Thriving Land Steward program. This is all that will get covered throughout the year. We're going to talk about the roots of holistic wisdom. We're going to talk about how we unlock our mindset, our holistic mindset. We're going to catalyze our human potential. I personally have realized that I have not been the most thriving land steward because there was issues with me, the fear, the lack of confidence. How do I support that? How do I allow myself to feel confident? Natural resource monitoring, we covered a little bit, but there's a lot more. If you're new to the land, what infrastructure do you need? How do you plan the water systems? How do you plan the fences? The grazing. The grazing is a whole masterclass in itself and more. And then the financial aspects of it. And then if the marketing, you're spending all this time raising this healthy animals and you're going to sell it at the livestock barn, that you're not going to get the value that you put in there. I don't understand. So if you decide to do direct to consumer, there's all this other marketing aspect that we need to do. A lot of us are very passionate about what we're doing, and we would like the whole world to be doing it. We can all be involved in the community and sharing this knowledge and sharing this wisdom and opening up our ranches and our operations to say, see, it can be done. If I can do it, you can do it. So specifically, the program will include weekly, what I'm calling cultivation conversations. And basically, they're going to be coaching calls. I will answer questions. I will clarify. I will support. I will encourage. I will cry with you. I will laugh with you. I will be there to answer any and all questions. And basically, what I've done is I've created a program that I wish I had 15, 20 years ago. I know after I learned about holistic management, I know how much I bugged my mentors. It was almost daily. What about this? I don't understand this. What about this? I will be that for you. And so this will be every week. There is a self-paced course. It's on an online platform. It will be a teaching module. There will be assignments. There will be homework. With activities that will help you implement. As adult learners, we need to do, we need to feel, we need to manipulate, we need to experience. And so I'm putting together all the things that help me and all the things I've learned through the years to be able to instill this into land stewards. It will also include 4 one-on-one 90-minute personalized coaching, specifically addressed to, we talked about the holistic goal and the decision testing. You'll go through the online platform. When you've completed the assignments, you can schedule the one-on-one and we can talk about that. If you're struggling, I will help you complete it, I will move you forward with respect to that. And on that list is there. I've listed more than 4. The program does allow for 4 one-on-one throughout that you can choose to take throughout the 12 months. You will have access to a community chat group through Telegram. I will be on there. I will be answering. You guys can share photographs, struggles. Hey, quickly, this is happening with my animal. What do I need to do? What I really want to focus on is, I know how difficult it is to feel isolated, that you can't talk to a neighbor because they think you're absolutely crazy, right? You're that crazy organic lady that does things so differently. I can't reach over the fence and say, I'm struggling this, what should I do? So I'm trying to put together a community of like-minded people that are on this journey together, that are encouraging, supporting, learning. And we all bring our different talents, our different perspectives, our different skills to support each other, right? I have not done this alone. I've been mentored, I've been coached, I've been criticized, I've been supported, I've been taught. So I am going to funnel all of that into you guys. And because I love having people on the ranch, and because I love feeding people on the ranch, and because I just like being a host, my mother was a very fabulous host, and I think I took care. The package also includes a 3-day ranch stay, likely in spring. The date is yet to be determined, and it's going to be a mix of education, hands-on learning. I'm going to show you how I move the animals. I'm going to explain to you why I set up my water system and fencing like I do. We'll eat, because part of the 3-day will be one of my ranch to dinner slow meat feast, which is my Argentine version of barbecue, which is much better than American barbecue, but I'm biased, I'll admit it. So that's all included. The travel to and fro is not included. If you were to hire me on a one-to-one basis for the whole year, it would cost $16,200 to hire me for the whole year. This program, the portal with the schooling, the cultivation, the 4 personalized sessions, the access to the chat group, and the 3-day ranch, the value is $19,000. And because I'm so passionate about this, and because I love to help people on this is going to be a one-time discount. You guys are going to be the only ones that are going to have this discount, because you will be the founding members. A lot of it too will, if we're missing something, if you need some support on an aspect that I haven't provided, I will do my damnedest to provide that support. So what I showed you, that framework, is not the end and be all. I will be adding as I see fit, right? As whatever the needs are, I will support you with. For the year, if you decide to purchase before Friday evening at midnight, I am offering a $500 discount, because you have been in the masterclass and you've put up with me and you've been so good at showing up. I want to reward you. So a $500 discount. So it would only be $5,000. There is a full price pay. There is also a payment plan. So if a payment plan makes it easier for you to manage your budget, that is available. I put the QR code on here. If I figure out how to do this, I also somewhere have in the chat. No, that's not it. I don't know where my chat went. There it is. I'm sending you the link to get, it goes into a little bit more details of the program. The offer is available until tomorrow midnight. After that, it will be the full price. And I am happy to answer any questions, because we have a little bit of time. But while you think of the questions, I wanted to announce the winner for yesterday's key takeaway. And Janine, are you still here are you driving, or are you still listening? Anyway, Janine is our.
Yes, I'm still here.
Oh,
Christine.
awesome. You have won I loved your key takeaway yesterday. So you won a $25 gift card. I will email you to see where you want the gift
Oh,
from.
thank you. Wonderful. Thank you.
And I would like we did talk about grazing, and I would like you, I'm also offering a $25 gift card for those of you that put a key takeaway for today's recovery revolution. And in the meantime, if you have any questions, whether it's with respect to the grazing or the Thriving Land Steward program, I'm happy to answer. My screens have gone all funny. I don't know what I did. There. Any questions? No?
Christine, this is Janine. I see a question in the chat that I believe, and you might have answered it and I might have missed it, but someone asked, I believe it was, I think they were referring to this coaching program that you just outlined. Would it be valuable if someone didn't have their farm animals yet?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. But the foundationals are still there. Obviously, if there was a plan within the 12 months to get animals, that would be better, because you will obviously be able to apply some of these concepts. But what I'm glad you asked that question, because a lot of times people that come onto land come with this preconceived notion, I'm going to have cattle. And I shared this with Ben, and he might share it on Monday, but Ben has a lot of wooded areas on his property that are too dense for cattle, but they would be perfect for sheep, because sheep and goats are browsers. So if you have dense wooded areas, sheep, that's a natural forage for them. So instead of coming in and bringing dozers and whatever to clear it, use the animals to clear it, maybe then bring pigs, and then maybe create a silvo pasture, and then you can put in the cattle. So we want to try and adapt the livestock to what our natural forage is, what our natural environment, and use those natural animals to then manage for what we want, right? And what nature is indicating she can handle, and what our goals are. I see here, what do you use to move your animals? Temporary electrical fencing or stationary? So I did, full disclosure, I'm lazy. And so I made a conscientious investment to create infrastructure to make my life easy. I'm running this place by myself. And one of the concepts with this grazing management is you're putting your animals where the best grass is. In the springtime, my best grass is on the opposite side of the ranch than the next best grass. And so I have to move the animals from one corner of the ranch to the other. The stress and the nervousness of having to string up fence to move them for that day, not for me. So I created a whole infrastructure system so that I can put them in the lane and move them, and it's super easy, and I can do it. At the time I moved onto this property, my daughter was here. We did not have a water system. We dug a well quickly because the well that was existing, the dogs wouldn't drink the water from because it was so bad. So I put in a water well, and my daughter was in charge of moving the livestock. And at one point she had 13 100-foot hoses with a movable water trough that she was having to move so that we can keep this grazing plan to plan for recovery. She was not a happy camper, especially in July and August when it was really hot. So I designed a water system so that anywhere I am on the ranch, I have a riser that's a quick connect where I put in there. All that to say, I put in some permanent fencing just to help with movements, and then the rest is all reels, polywires, reels, and portable solar chargers. Any more key takeaways? And I'm happy to answer more specific questions on Monday after Ben. Maybe we can even have Ben answer some questions too, to share his experience and his struggles with respect to infrastructure. All good? Thank you, guys. Tomorrow we're going to be talking finances. Very exciting. How do we make money? How do we invest our money? How do we get the best rate of return? And unfortunately, without money, we can't do much. So money is very important. So we'll cover that. And then if you have more questions about the program, I will probably share, because I'm very proud of this program. If I was in your boats, I would pick it up, but I have 20 years of experience of how not to do things. And I would really like to keep you from learning how not to do things. I would like you to thrive much sooner than I ever thrive. Thrive. The librarian, Ben is, I told you Ben is a librarian. He's cringing here with my language. All right, guys, thank you so much. We'll see you tomorrow. I'll post the recording in the morning. Thank you. Bye. Have a nice evening. Oh, and tomorrow's Friday, so come casual and come with a drink.